The mighty St. Lawrence. Weaving between its shores, the river inspires an entire people. At times Gulf, at times estuary, it reaches deep into Quebec, a never-ending wave that tastes of the sea. The schooner Sedna IV has returned to Canada. Over the past 3 years, she has crisscrossed the planet to document nature's beauty and fragility. But she made some troubling observations along the way. Almost everywhere, on land and in the oceans, species are struggling to survive, victims of our uncontrolled exploitation of natural resources. Today, as her latest mission draws to a close, Sedna IV returns to her source, sailing up the Gulf of St. Lawrence to better understand and appreciate its bounty and fragility. The way that walks, as indigenous peoples called it, is fed by lakes and rivers representing nearly 1/4 of the Earth's fresh water. The river also tells the story of those who live on its shores and islands, who sail and fish its waters. People who are said to have salt water in their veins. It is the soul of a proud nation, one whose history and destiny have been shaped by their maritime heritage. Its bounty attracts life in every imaginable form. Its complex and varied ecosystems and its abundant resources support a variety of wildlife. People come from around the world to marvel at its landscapes and diversity. Seals, dolphins, and whales come here to feed, following age-old migration cycles that their survival depends on. Every year, the largest mammals on the planet return to partake of this extraordinary productivity. 13 whale species frequent the St. Lawrence, making it one of the best places on Earth to observe our last giants. Among the largest animals on Earth, the fin whale can reach over 20 meters in length and weigh from 40 to 80 tons. Nicknamed the Greyhound of the Sea, its top speed is almost 40 kilometers per hour. Hunted in the North Atlantic until 1972, fin whales are still classified as endangered in many regions. No one knows exactly where fin whales go when they leave the St. Lawrence in late fall. In fact, discovering the migration routes of most whale species is one of the greatest challenges facing the scientists who study them. But the breeding grounds of one species is known, the humpback whale. After wintering in the waters off the Dominican Republic, humpback whales return to the St. Lawrence in great numbers. They return each year to feed on krill and small fish, consuming up to 1,500 kilograms of food per day. After the international whaling moratorium in 1986, humpback whale populations have grown considerably. Humpbacks can grow up to 15 meters long and weigh over 45 tons. After breathing at the surface for a time, they dive and raise their wide tail flukes, which allows them to be identified. Much like human fingerprints, individual whales have distinct tail pigmentations. Humpbacks are a favorite of tour operators, and they frequently delight whale watchers with their spectacular displays. But of all the great whales, the blue whale is the most impressive. Up to 150 tons of power and grace. The largest mammal of all time, it averages over 25 meters long. The largest specimen ever captured in the Antarctic measured over 33 meters. It is estimated that the relentless whaling of the last century reduced its numbers by 99%. Even after the international ban, it has struggled to recover. Today, it is likely that only a few thousand remain, and the blue whale remains on the endangered species list. While the St. Lawrence is one of the best places in the world to observe blue whales, the local population numbers only a few hundred, and no one yet knows where they go when they leave in the fall. The Sedna 4's crew wanted to follow the great whales of the St. Lawrence to better document their movements. In partnership with a team of Richard Sears, a pioneer in marine mammal research, the schooner will crisscross the Gulf of St. Lawrence in search of blue whales. Discovering the migration routes of this species is a lifelong dream for Sears, who has sought to solve this mystery for over 30 years. Sears and Sedna 4's mission chief, Jean Lemire, have been studying whale behavior together for years. Today, the crew embarks on one of the most significant oceanographic expeditions ever undertaken to discover the migration routes of blue whales.
What we want to do with Sedna is survey the Laurentian Channel with zigzag transects as far as Cabot Strait, or even further, in the hopes of seeing blue whales all through the area. The plan is to tag the blue whales from mid-September until as late in the year as we can manage, to try to see where they go, or at least see what route they take out of the St. Lawrence. We hope the tags will last long enough to give us an idea where and how far they go along the coast of North America, or even further. We know the blue whales are very active. We know some animals who may be off Nova Scotia in an area called the Gully could be in the estuary 19 days later, as we've seen in the past. But we don't have much information on that.
It's amazing that after 30 years of research, we still don't know the migration routes once they leave the St. Lawrence.
We mostly know what goes on along the coast. We know a lot about what happens in the area from Gaspé to Mingan and up towards Tadoussac. We have a very good idea about many of the animals' movement patterns. Fin whales, humpbacks, blue whales, and so on. But we don't know where they go once they leave the St. Lawrence.
This huge study hopes to cover the entire St. Lawrence in partnership with scientists from Fisheries and Oceans Canada. Unfortunately, blue whales have been scarce this year. Bad news for the scientists, who have unleashed an army of researchers to solve the mystery of the whale's migration.
We know that right now, at least 8 blue whales are in the area. They've been spotted from the air and observed from boats by the government. So there are fewer blue whales than there were back in the 1990s, even in the estuary.
And for a whale, there's no real other way in.
Well, there are other routes, but we know this is a good spot. The tracking data indicates that they come this way. Some have gone south of the Magdalens Islands, but most come through here.
Véronique Lesage is a Fisheries and Oceans Canada scientist. She coordinates the satellite monitoring program for the blue whales in the St. Lawrence. Blue whales have been classified as endangered in Canada since 2005, and the Canadian government has a legal obligation to protect them.
The purpose of the project is to learn what blue whales do out beyond the estuary and the Gulf of St. Lawrence and outside the summer season, for which we have the best data. We know a lot about the areas where they feed, but we don't yet know where the animals spend the winter. That's when they give birth and they raise their calves. It's a very important time in their life cycle. People ask us where that happens, and for now, we have to say maybe in the south, but we can't say for sure.
New satellite tracking technology can help answer these questions.
The tag is the beige part you see here. The little antenna transmits a signal to the satellites. This part is sterile, and these are the anchors. Unlike the older models, which we never wanted to use, these tags are designed to attach to the dorsal fin, which, like our ears, is just cartilage. If we miss the dorsal fin and hit too low, the darts are too short to reach the underlying muscle, so that limits the risk of infection. All that happens is that it anchors to the fatty tissue just under the skin. The problem is that when we miss the target, we can't track the animal as long as we would otherwise, because if the device isn't anchored in the stiff cartilage, it can stick out from the body. The satellite transmitters send the data directly to satellites overhead, so we can track the animals wherever they go on the planet. It's fantastic.
Lesage and her team focus their efforts on the St. Lawrence estuary, while Sears' team covers the Gulf, from the tip of the Gaspé Peninsula to Cabot Strait, the presumed entry and exit corridor of the blue whales. The schooner reaches the French archipelago of Saint-Pierre-et-Miquelon, located 25 kilometers off Newfoundland. Large numbers of whales regularly frequent the area, known for being highly productive.
Blue whales are often solitary, but in an area with abundant food, you might see every mile or two, a dozen or even 20 whales in one area. In bodies of water like here in the St. Lawrence, food isn't set out in a circle or a square. There are streams of fish or krill in the water that follow streams of chlorophyll, phytoplankton, and so on. So the animals follow that, which are themselves affected by currents, waves, and water temperatures. And that all fluctuates over the course of a year, over a season, and of course, from year to year. But there are places where you can reliably expect to see blue whales, like the St. Lawrence estuary, around the Mingan-Anticosti area, or the tip of the Gaspé Peninsula. So, we can cover a lot of nautical miles in a day just to find where the animals are hanging out.
Looking at 15 or 20 different humpback whales in the area here, which is exciting.
This concentration of humpbacks means that there is food here. A few minke and fin whales have also been observed, but there's still no sign of any blue whales.
What's this guy doing here?
Scientists use photographs of the undersides of the tail to identify humpback whales. Each one has a distinctive pattern, allowing individuals to be told apart. The humpback has recovered because scientists have been able to preserve its vital habitat. To properly protect a species, we must first understand its migratory routes and the areas it travels through. In the waters off the Dominican Republic, Sears and Lemire share the underwater world of the humpback, a true privilege for those who study them. In the clear waters off Silver Bank, a shoal protected by the Dominican Republic, scientists observe a female and her calf. Occasionally, mutual curiosity between two species can produce magical encounters that demonstrate the special relationship between whales and humans. The female slowly steers her calf toward the divers. The calf is only a few months old and still learning. The female watches over the encounter. While scientists are very familiar with this winter breeding area, they would like to better understand the routes humpbacks use when they migrate north to their feeding grounds. Small satellite tags affixed to the whales' backs using modified air guns allow scientists to follow the humpback's daily movements. One especially effective tag sent positioning data for 57 days as the whale migrated north. This precious data helped reveal the whale's precise route from the Dominican Republic to the waters off the coast of Newfoundland. These results are part of a sustained effort by scientists to better protect the species.
With the blue whale in the North Atlantic, it's not clear if we're dealing with one population or several. This population, like so many others, has been extensively hunted. We didn't think we'd find many individuals. Even today, we have no idea how many animals there are in this population, but we're talking about a few hundred. Over the years, very few calves have been observed in the St. Lawrence. We don't know why. We thought at one point that it was a problem of reproduction. However, data from other places suggest that the animals may be weaned earlier in the year than when we can begin our systematic observation here in the estuary or the northwestern part of the Gulf. The weanlings may also decide to go elsewhere or stay further to the south for some reason. So we don't have the answer yet. There are projects on the way to throw light on the question of blue whale reproduction, but we'll have to wait a few years to get the final answer.
Despite weeks of searching, the scientists must admit defeat this year.
We've been on the lookout for blue whales for a while.
Yes, it's odd that we haven't seen a blue whale in the St. Lawrence. Surprising. It's possible that the season's been delayed because of the winter. And then the very hot summer. Hard to say.
The St. Lawrence is changing. These changes are occurring because of various and complex factors, including climate change, which alters currents and modifies how food is distributed. Understanding and predicting the consequences of these variations is a huge challenge for the scientists who expend considerable effort each year to protect the species that depend on it. In winter, the ice takes longer and longer to form, which can affect certain migration habits. Most whales must leave the St. Lawrence before the ice forms. But where do they go? Increasingly, researchers are taking an interest in huge underwater mountains called seamounts. The team sets course for the Azores. This Portuguese volcanic archipelago located on the mid-Atlantic ridge was once an underwater mountain range. These islands in the middle of the Atlantic are a natural refuge for marine mammals. 27 species of cetacean, some resident, some migratory, frequent this area. Among them is the sperm whale, the largest of the toothed whales. Males can reach over 20 meters in length and weigh nearly 60 tons. Humpback whales occasionally visit the Azores. This female and her calf are probably traveling from the Cape Verde Islands off the African coast to their feeding grounds off the coast of Iceland and Norway. The research team will try to deploy satellite tags on blue whales to better understand their migration patterns in this sector of the Atlantic. The blue whales have arrived. Their powerful spouts can rise up to 6 meters and are visible from a great distance, making it easier for the scientists to spot them.
Right there.
The tags being $3,500 makes it a little bit stressful when you're going to shoot. That's why you want to have the best conditions possible. And these conditions may be considered the best conditions possible here in the Azores. The animal's pretty relaxed, it's nearby. So I think we have a good chance of being able to approach it and trying to put the tag on. The distance you need to be at is about 4 to 5 meters, no further than that to make the shot. And actually, this is good, this situation, because the animal's going to be used to our constant movement and the steadiness of what we're doing. So perhaps it'll be more accepting of us when we get closer. And this animal's, so far as just looking at its behavior at the surface, it's nice because it seems to lift up that area that we need to shoot at. So just around the dorsal fin or just below. Some tags only last for 10 days, 2 weeks. You never know. But what we'd like to get is at least a month. You know, we'll hope to have that and hope that the animal swims, you know, on its migration north, and we learn something about how they use the oceans. You know, it may not actually get to Ireland or Iceland or close to it, but we'll see if it goes along the mid-Atlantic ridge or if it stops off on some seamounts to one side or the other of the mid-Atlantic ridge, and that's something that's I find more and more interesting because it shows that these animals aren't just using coastal areas where we perceive it to be the most productive, and it is, those are productive areas, but we're finding out that there are other spots that these animals know about that we don't, and it's all these seamounts out in the ocean, which are a little less accessible to humans, and probably that's a good thing. Okay, let's go in there. When she comes up, when she commits to breathing, go in. But we're gonna have to be a lot tighter. This is far away. Ooh. Of course, it's going upwind. God damn it. Okay, she's kicking. Go. Go.
So close.
At that moment, that's where gentleness goes out. We get in there, bang, finish. It was tempting, but it was a little far, and it was a little forward. And doesn't like us. He's wondering what we're doing. No. There was no way I was gonna get that.
No.
So the game's almost up here. Ah! It's cutting underneath us.
Too far, too far.
Ah, shit! We lost it. Quick, get the tag. Get the tag, I think we lost it. It's hit too low.
Good. That's important.
Okay.
That's the.
Well, that was a bad shot, but anyway, I think I was getting fed up.
That was close.
Well, the other one was, yeah, it hit, but it didn't do what it was supposed to, what we'd hoped for. Yeah, it shot a little, I shot a little low and hit the water, and so that keeps it from penetrating properly. And anyway, we learned some stuff.
Well, the good thing is you still have a tag.
The tag is not lost. It can be used another day.
Or in the Gulf of St. Lawrence.
Or in the Gulf of St. Lawrence, yep.
Like their kin in the St. Lawrence, the Northeast Atlantic blue whales have once again foiled the scientists. The migration routes of the largest mammal on the planet remain a mystery. Spring has finally arrived. The ice is breaking up, freeing the Gulf of St. Lawrence from the hold of winter. The first blue whales arrive at the entrance to the Gulf, feeding on the spring plankton bloom. Blue whales can become trapped by moving ice floes, so ice represents a real threat. Reckless or inexperienced whales may even drown, unable to reach the surface to breathe. Unlike last year, the blue whales have arrived, and in such numbers that the scientists can pick and choose their targets. But it is vital to photo-identify the whales before installing the satellite tags. And with over 40 blue whales in this sector, care and patience are required.
I need photos because we didn't see that animal yesterday.
A pair has been identified among the group. Pairs are often easier to approach, and Sears will focus on these animals.
Okay, just stop here, wait. We'll wait one more time.
If this guy's too difficult, we'll head that way.
Let's try that one. She's not showing the dorsal. Okay, you're a little close. Get me in there, Case. No, not yet. Whoops. Next time. Okay, go. It's right in beautifully. Nice job, baby.
Yes, sir.
Nice job.
Yes, first one.
That was pretty good. It's high up.
Yeah.
Took my time. I was even aiming a bit with the thing for a change.
A tag has finally been deployed. The scientists can now follow the whale's movements.
The information we get from these particular tags is the animal's location, nothing more. Other types of tags can transmit information about diving behavior, but there's a trade-off. They're larger and they tend not to last as long. For us to track blue whales all winter long, we need to make sure the tags stay on and keep working as long as possible. So for the moment, we're not collecting data on diving behavior. The tag transmits to the satellite every time the animal comes up to the surface, so we want it to be as high as possible on the animal's back. That's the dorsal fin. So every time the tag comes out of the water, it sends a signal. There may or may not be a satellite passing overhead at that moment, so we don't get a signal every time the animal surfaces. A satellite may take around 12 minutes to pass over this area, so the animal has to surface during those 12 minutes. A blue whale can stay underwater up to 20 minutes, so there's no guarantee that whenever a satellite passes, we'll get a signal. So far, we've tagged 25 blue whales since 2010. And 24 out of the 25 tags worked for a period of time.
Its name is Symphony. It's one of the first blue whales that Richard Sears photo-identified in the St. Lawrence over 30 years ago.
Symphony sent data for 6 months. Symphony, who traveled here. This shows Symphony's movements. There's a different color for each month. We tagged this animal in the estuary in November. She set off on her migration in November, going right out of the Gulf and making for this area, where the water is 4,000 to 5,000 meters deep, an area just north of an underwater mountain chain called a seamount. And you can see from the track, in fact, there are 2 periods. There's November, then in dark blue, there's December. Then she heads towards Nova Scotia, and we lose the signal. We thought that was the end of it. But we were pleased we'd collected a fair amount of data. But no, she shows up again 2 weeks later in this area off the coast of Delaware, then goes back up to Nova Scotia. Then what's interesting is that in March, here in red, she decides to head back to the Gulf, but that year there was a lot of ice. So instead, she decides to backtrack and wait till later to enter the Gulf. And she spends the rest of the winter and the spring up to May, when we lost the signal, back in the area to the north of the seamount.
That's interesting, because we know that when she came north to enter the St. Lawrence, there was a lot of ice and she didn't enter. But she went back to the exact same place she went when she left the St. Lawrence.
Yes.
So if that's a productive zone, we know that in the spring they're looking for food.
Right. So before we get an in-depth understanding of what's going on with the species, this population over the winter outside the feeding period, we have more work to do. We'll keep on tagging. It's hard work, slowly but surely.
Better understand to better protect. It took over 30 years of effort, research, and passion to write the first chapters of the Charter to protect and conserve the largest animal to ever have lived.
Obviously, with only 1 or 2 tags, even if they were females, it's exciting, of course, but it doesn't allow us to draw any conclusions about what this population does in general. If we want to conserve a species like the blue whale, we have to expand our efforts well beyond a small area, because the animals travel such great distances. So, for example, with the data we now have, we know that not only should we align our efforts with the US, but also start to look at international waters to try to better understand the species and its needs.
When it comes to conserving natural ecosystems and biodiversity, the stakes are enormous and planet-wide. Never in Earth's history has the rate of species extinction been so high. Our insatiable consumption of the world's natural resources has weakened the equilibrium among species and threatens life in all its forms. The St. Lawrence is no exception. The fragility of these unique and complex ecosystems calls for great prudence. For centuries, we hunted whales in order to light our homes. Over time, whale oil was replaced by other sources of non-renewable fossil fuels. Yet even knowing the toll inflicted by past practices, humans cannot seem to learn from the errors of their ways. The quest for and control of oil have generated conflict all over the world and pumped greenhouse gases into the atmosphere with devastating effects on the climate. On Anticosti Island, a natural gem of the St. Lawrence, we are fracturing the ground in search of fossil fuels. And the vast St. Lawrence Valley is also in the sights of those who search for oil and gas. In the middle of the St. Lawrence, on the site of Old Harry, large oil reserves are thought to exist deep under the Great River. But scientists have warned governments about the devastating consequences of an oil spill.
This is the whale's pantry, and if anything were to happen with exploration, we know this is one of the first places that would be affected.
Yes, all the simulations done by the folks at Memorial University and others have shown that if there's an oil spill near Old Harry, it'll wash up on the coast of Newfoundland, but eventually spread much further. It'll affect the Magdalens Islands and other fishing grounds in the St. Lawrence, but quite possibly much further out. But this whole area is the pantry. With all the different things we're doing, pollution, inadequate water treatment, the prospect of oil drilling, we know that the belugas have their own problems, and that eventually other marine mammals in the St. Lawrence will also be affected. Money talks, and big business reigns supreme. The environment isn't given a passing thought. We know that without environmental balance, that species, including our own, will struggle to survive.
The risks are very real, and scientists' fears are only heightened by the specter of past catastrophes. A single liter of oil can contaminate 1 million liters of water. The ever-expanding search for fossil fuels is among the greatest threats to the survival of many species, including our own. The exploitation of marine oil resources, the oil sands, and the many oil and gas pipelines have inevitable environmental consequences. The Earth is being smothered with a new heat wave, and the excessive emissions of greenhouse gases will continue to change the climate, with devastating consequences that are already being felt around the world. Locally, increased shipping traffic to transport oil will affect the fragile habitats of whales. The St. Lawrence beluga, a resident species threatened with extinction, is struggling to survive in an environment that is increasingly disturbed by human activity. Measures to protect the species, adopted in collaboration with the shipping industry, must be put in place quickly if we are to save the St. Lawrence beluga. But time is of the essence. Only 900 are thought to remain, and scientists have observed a decline in their numbers in recent years. Sedna 4 has returned from a trip around the world, one that demonstrated to her crew the urgency of taking action. Faced with the unchecked exploitation of resources, species everywhere are struggling to survive. For Mission Chief Jean Lemire, a wind of change is needed, and quickly.
It's funny to think that this is where it all began. It was over 30 years ago, and I came to this beach to study birds, puffins. I was here taking notes, and a guy came along. It was Richard Sears. He offered to take me out to sea. We came across a blue whale, just past l'île aux perroquets, and it changed my life. It's funny because since then we've done so many things. We've been around the world, we've traveled. We've tried to make the public aware, and I think the more we traveled in the world, the more we realized how much work there is to do. And the only hope is children, young people. That's why we do so much work with young people. We try to instill the right values from the beginning, because maybe one day they'll be in charge and they'll change things. But we don't seem to be getting anywhere. It's as if there have been wonderful times when we really felt that people were listening, that they got it and believed in it. But I don't know.
Perhaps, to heal this ever-widening rift between humans and nature, we need to stop and simply take in the world's beauty. The whale's spout rises like a beacon. The perseverance of scientists should be an inspiration and serve as a model of how to exploit the Earth's resources. Can we reconcile ecological and economic priorities in order to preserve nature in all her beauty and fragility? We must, because in this confrontation between humans and nature, there are likely to be neither winners nor losers. If we do not quickly change our attitudes towards conservation, there will only be victims. The Arctic. After months of winter, the sky begins to lighten. The sun peaks over the horizon, and the landscape blazes in a ruddy golden glow. It's the signal. Life reawakens after months of hibernation. The Lord of the Arctic leaves his den. His fat stores enabled him to survive the long months of winter. But it's time to rebuild his energy stores. He rediscovers his vast territory encased in ice, frozen in time. The glaciers seem to slumber, and the sea hides under its thick cover, the sprawling ice shelf that has supported life for thousands of years. In these first days of spring, survival depends on knowing how to deal with the cold, the wind, and the snow. That's how it has always been for dwellers of the Arctic. Adaptability has allowed the Inuit to survive the rigors of the Arctic. Hunting provides not just food, but also their tools and their clothing. Their age-old traditional culture is still very much a part of the way of life and the customs of this remarkable people. Ice has kept the area in isolation, but the conquest of the Arctic has, for centuries, lured many a daring navigator with dreams of finding the famous Northwest Passage, a sea route to link Europe and Asia. Sailing the Northwest Passage has remained a major challenge for explorers who, until very recently, risked their lives to sail across the Arctic. In 2002, the oceanographic schooner Sedna 4 set off to conquer the legendary passage. At the time, the Arctic was still a land of ice, dangerous and hostile to navigation. Scientists were already sounding the alarm about accelerating climate change that was threatening some of the Arctic's iconic species who depend on the ice for survival. Predictions of calamity came by the dozens, but warnings for scientists were largely ignored. Scientists are increasingly worried about the consequences of climate change for Arctic wildlife. An expedition to observe the effects of global warming at the floe edge gets underway.
So we're on the beach now. We're just about to go into the sea ice, the frozen ocean. We're going to be taking 3 sleds, 2 people per sled, and we're going to head due east across the frozen ocean out towards the floe edge. So it's the
David Reed knows the sea ice well. Every spring, he joins the Inuit of the village of Pont Inlet to document changes observed over recent decades. The mission leader of the schooner Sedna 4, Jean Lemire, is also familiar with the Arctic. His many expeditions have documented the devastating effect of climate change all over the planet. He's joined by fellow explorer Gilles Gouet, a globetrotter who has been on over 65 expeditions in various parts of the globe. It'll take several hours for the expedition to reach the floe edge. The frozen ocean is a highway for snowmobiles towing hamutiks, the Inuit sled adapted for the ice and loaded with heavy equipment.
The ice anywhere in the Arctic is important, but particularly I think for those that live here and depend on the land for food, sustainable harvesting, hunting. If you can imagine the Trans-Canada, you take it for granted that you can go on a highway and you can travel to visit friends and family. The ice is that to the Inuit. It's their means to travel, it's their means to hunt. It's an extension of the land for so much of the year. Yes, some travel is on terra firma, but what's unique about the Arctic is that for this chunk of the year, the water becomes land.
Sea ice has always been crucial to Inuit culture. Nomadic families had no choice but to pack up their temporary camps to follow the seals, their main food source in winter. Today, the means of transportation may have changed, yet the ice maintains a vital role in the local culture that still uses the floe edge as a spring hunting ground.
It's a serious playground. While you spend a lot of time on the ice and it feels solid under your feet, when you visit somewhere like the floe edge and you look over the edge and you realize that there's 4 or 5 feet of ice compared to the depth of the water, it's still only a membrane. It's a membrane of ice that we spend so much time traveling on. And again, it's that idea, if you take it for granted, that's when you get into trouble. You've always got to be aware of the fact that it is impermanent. It can go, it can break up.
Being able to live on this frozen ocean in the spring, far out to sea, is a privilege for these modern adventurers who, for 30 years, have been documenting changes caused by a climate in turmoil.
Wow. That's nice. You can see the ice on the other side.
It's the ice that used to be attached to the landfast site that we're on has moved off.
How many trips to the floe edge did you do?
Since the beginning?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. 60? 70?
And usually, when did you come to the floe edge? The first time?
I think the first time was in 1987. It was in June, late June. It was still pretty good on the ice. And we came back probably between the 15th and the 17th of July. The ice was still strong enough to be able to walk and safely. I don't think it would be possible today to do that.
No, and for the last few years, it's rare that anybody's out here, at least on the ice, past July the 1st.
Yeah.
Rising temperatures, observed in recent decades, have a direct effect on the ice shelf. Spring comes earlier every year, and fall comes later. This has a direct effect on the traditional activities of the Inuit.
And in the early 90s, it was always a bit of a challenge to go kayaking in early October, even late September. I remember clearly there were occasions where the end of August, beginning of September, there was ice in the puddles. And if I was able to go kayaking in early October, I would come back caked in ice, and the paddle would be dripping with ice, and there'd be icicles on the kayak. Now, I would say, you can easily go kayaking well into October.
Milder autumns delay the formation of the ice shelf. The spring thaw is also much earlier, which reduces the period of deep cold in the winter. Over the last 40 winters, the average thickness of the sea ice has been reduced by nearly a meter.
At the moment, there's nothing between us and Greenland, so it's completely open, and this is the edge, and this is the area that attracts the most wildlife. But with the use of a hydrophone and attached speaker, we can actually listen to what's going on underneath the surface.
Amazing.
Most of what you're hearing is the bearded seal, known as the ujuk. Those long descending whistles, and also the long ascending whistles. I think a lot of people that we talk to don't associate whistling with seals.
Yeah.
So when they hear it, they immediately ask, "What is that?" And then when you say, predominantly it's bearded seals that are very, very vocal. It's interesting to watch sometimes the local hunters who are out here hunting seals. They know these animals so well. They eat them, they wear them, they hunt them year round. But in some cases, they've never ever heard them. So the relationship with this animal, it's a very intimate relationship. And occasionally when you have the hydrophone in the water and they hear these animals that to an extent they know so well, but to see the expression on their face when they hear these sounds, it's like a whole other world. It's a whole other relationship opening up right in front of you. The one sound that's particularly noticeable if it's in the area is a walrus. Again, you get a sense of what's above and what's below. So if you don't see any seals around, that's a possible indication that there's walrus around. And the sound that they make, it's almost like taking two pieces of wood and just tapping them together.
The polar bear is still hungry. He sets off hunting again, causing quite a disturbance. Everyone has to stay alert because the big predator is surprisingly stealthy despite his size.
Big one there.
Yeah, probably about a bear, maybe 7-8 feet long.
Yeah.
But you can see just that print alone. It's probably the size of a dinner plate.
Yeah.
Probably a male. One way you tell the difference between males and females is when bears walk, the males, their toes are slightly turned in. So you can see the difference between this print and this print. They're slightly turned in, whereas female tracks, not only is the track slightly smaller, but they tend to walk straighter. When you watch them walk, it's almost like they're in slow motion. Because the males have a lot of hair on the soles of their feet, which actually acts as a camouflage on the ice with the seals underneath. When they're walking, you can see how they drag and drop. Just drag, drop. So it's almost like they're sloping along. You can see where the hair has dragged before it puts its foot down. They brush and step, brush and step.
The sea ice is melting quickly again this year, exposing large expanses of open ocean.
With Sedna in 2002, we were the 7th boat of the history to make the Northwest Passage in one season. And we had a furious battle with ice, to get through it. Now, if you go around Bellot Strait in September, there's, lots of boats that can do it.
A couple of years ago, there was 28 either ships or yachts scheduled to make the passage.
Yeah.
In 2002, while attempting the Northwest Passage, Sedna 4 is blocked, stuck in shifting sheets of ice that endanger the big schooner. The crew, supported by a reconnaissance plane from the Canadian Ice Service, is at an impasse. These are precisely the conditions they wanted to avoid. The banging and grinding of the ice against the steel hull is unsettling. Finally, an opening. After hours searching for small leads, Sedna is able to break free of the ice. She becomes the 7th sailing ship in history to navigate the Northwest Passage in a single season without an icebreaker to assist. The big ship has returned to the same spot on the same date, 13 years later, to observe the effects of warming in the Arctic. The difference is overwhelming. Sea ice is just a memory in a number of parts of the Arctic in summer. And it's not just the sea ice that has been affected by warming. The glaciers have shrunk dramatically, and their rapid melting creates torrents of fresh water that pours into the sea. The bowheads are still here, but the ice which held their food in place and helped it to grow is gone. What are the long-term consequences for a species that has always depended on the ice? The snow has melted too. The great white mirror that reflected solar energy is gone, and the dark landscape now absorbs even more heat. Sedna can reach unexplored territories which were inaccessible in the past. Everywhere, inshore and offshore, there isn't a trace of the ice shelf at the end of summer. Icebergs float in open water, transient vestiges of the great glaciers shrinking rapidly in this unaccustomed heat. Colossal slabs of ice remind us that the polar cap is also starting to break up, far to the north in the high Arctic, where no one imagined global warming having an effect. They drift down here like monuments commemorating a very recent past. Other icebergs come directly from Greenland, another polar region affected by climate change. The accelerating disappearance of sea ice is opening the way for shipping. More and more ships are coming north for resource development or simply to visit this little-known part of the world. But another worry has reared its head: natural resource extraction in the Arctic. The newly accessible region is a magnet for mining companies who would like to transport raw materials by sea.
One of the world's largest deposits of iron ore has been found in a place called Mary River, which is about 100 kilometers southwest of a pond. To provide the smelters with a consistent year-round supply of iron ore, that would necessitate breaking the ice. At the moment, they're talking about utilizing the 2.5, 3 months of open water, which is obviously a lot easier to navigate, et cetera, et cetera. But in order to satisfy that demand, they want to push that to a 10-month shipping season. So does that impact the ability to travel on the ice? Yes, it does. There's no question about it. If all of a sudden there's let's say 100-foot wide lead in the ice, well, there's no way you can cross that. So the effect that the potential shipping has is that hunters will no longer be able to travel to and harvest in the areas that they traditionally did.
The mine site is located near the narwhal's breeding grounds. Bad news for a species that uses sounds and vocalizations to maintain the social structure in groups.
Narwhals themselves tend to be quite a shy species. They're quite a skittish whale. And indications are that they would initially leave the area if the shipping was allowed to proceed.
Traditionally, hunters believed that animals would offer themselves to humans, provided they were treated with respect. Respect for their prey and the environment are at the root of Inuit traditions. Sharing traditional food, rich in fat and vitamins, has always been at the heart of these nomadic communities. Many generations of Inuit families have traversed the frozen wastes of the high Arctic to survive. This subsistence hunting provided food, clothing, and tools. Today, subsistence hunting remains at the heart of modern Inuit communities.
Not that long ago, this was the grocery store. So you can imagine what a celebratory feel it would be to get through that long, dark winter. And then not only the arrival of the warmer weather, but also the arrival of the animals, whether it be the polar bears, the seals, the whales, the snow geese. These animals, in many cases, are plentiful. In terms of the perception of people hunting animals, it has to be remembered that if you were to catch a narwhal, to harvest a narwhal, that will feed several families for several days.
The floe edge remains a spring gathering place for all the wildlife in the Arctic. Hunters and predators brave the elements to find their prey, following an age-old tradition now threatened by climate chaos. The great spectacle of Arctic life in the raw is here for all to see. But for how long? While subsistence hunting is a major activity for Inuit communities, it is strictly regulated. Caps on the number of animals taken allow communities to continue a 1,000-year-old tradition while protecting the herds. This bowhead whale, hunted off the village of Point Barrow, Alaska, will be cut up and shared with every member of the community, as tradition dictates.
In the South, is the idea of, humans and everything else. And I think the interconnectedness, the connection that exists still in this part of the world, that relationship that they have with the animals, it's a far deeper, more meaningful relationship than I think we have in other parts of the world.
At the floe edge, a narwhal has just been killed and hauled up on the ice. They are hunted primarily for their muktuk. The thick layer of skin and fat tastes like hazelnut and is a favorite delicacy among the Inuit. Scientists have determined that traditional Inuit hunting of narwhals for subsistence poses no danger to the conservation of the species. The Inuit deliberately leave the carcass and some of the meat on the ice, a way of sharing their catch with the animals they respect, like the polar bear.
Narwhal.
Caught by a local hunter. And they would have cleaned the muktuk, the skin of the whale. They would have taken all that off. They'll have probably headed back home to share it with the family and with the community. And the meat and the head will be left, and between the foxes and the polar bears, and you'll notice a lot of seagull tracks around.
Yeah.
So probably in a couple of days it'll be picked completely clean.
Yeah.
Often the bears will take the blubber first.
Yeah.
And then the meat.
On average, one attack in every 20 will result in a kill for a bear. With the rapid shrinking of the ice shelf, polar bears are struggling to find enough food to survive. The smell of the carcass, a welcome offering from the hunters, gratefully accepted. And they have nothing to fear at this time of year. It's not bear hunting season, and the Inuit focus on other prey. Tonight, there's fresh meat on the menu for some, and muktuk for others. One creature's sacrifice helps ensure the survival of others. It's midnight. Another night as bright as day on this ice shelf that keeps on melting in the non-stop sunlight. The breakup was early again this year. In less than 40 days, it all disappeared. The sea ice is gone, and Sedna 4 can now explore areas that used to be hard to get to. Some bays that were completely ice-covered are now open for exploration. The huge rise in mean temperature has transformed these northern vistas forever. The crew can see with their own eyes the dramatic retreat of the glaciers. In some areas, there's almost nothing left of these ancient glaciers. They've vanished or are in rapid decline. The great spectacle of nature is increasingly threatened. Between Sedna IV's first trip to the Arctic less than 15 years ago and now, the changes to the landscape are striking. Images from that first expedition are records of another era. The Arctic is transforming rapidly, perhaps too rapidly. Many glaciers no longer reach the sea. The major retreat of the glaciers, long predicted by scientists, is real and visible today. Sedna IV was able to sail right to the end of a long arm of the sea. Until very recently, it was inaccessible because of ice. Streams of fresh water cut across the ancient moraine, eroding rock debris carried by the glacier tongue that used to dip into the bay.
Not bad, huh?
Fabulous.
Starting at the top, you see all the runoff water that collects, because if you look here, it's all surface runoff. The runoff water under the glacier is what allows the glacier to advance.
As you can see with the slope, the water runs faster and gets deeper. It must be just a trickle at the top.
It's important to understand that in the Arctic, there's very little precipitation. And what forms a glacier is the accumulation of snow that's been tamped down. With hardly any precipitation in the Arctic, as it warms up, the balance will be thrown off. There won't be enough new snow to replace all the snow and ice that's melting. And that's why the glacier will slowly disappear. Like most of the glaciers here, because the temperature is already too high. Global warming projections give an average temperature rise for the whole planet of 2 degrees. Some say 4 or 5 degrees, but that's an average. For the northern regions, for places like this, it will be more like a rise of 7, 8, even 9 degrees Celsius. With that kind of increase, these glaciers don't stand a chance. This landscape has been part of Inuit culture forever. It has always been part of their house, their territory. And it's changing at an incredible rate of speed.
The Lord of the Arctic is suffering from the absence of sea ice. He now has to find other sources of food on land, which dangerously limits this ice hunting specialist's ability to feed.
There's estimated to be about 25,000 polar bears in the world. Canada has about 2/3 of the known polar bears. There are certain areas where polar bears are not doing well, and those are typically areas where there's less sea ice. the dependency of the polar bear on the ring seal, you take away the sea ice, and what you're doing is you're depriving the ring seal of a place to have its pups. So if you take that food source away, the domino effect of that is that everything that's dependent on the seal is going to suffer, particularly in the areas like the Hudson Strait between northern Quebec and Baffin Island. There's issues where there's less ice, and various reports have stated that the bears are in quite poor shape.
Polar bears are excellent swimmers and can travel long distances, but that doesn't make them good sea hunters. It's almost autumn, and he is hungry. He must find food soon or he won't survive. He's prepared to take enormous risks to ease his hunger. Walrus are an excellent food source, but attacking one of the most powerful predators in the Arctic is an enormous challenge. The bear needs to be careful. Walrus tusks can prove fatal. In the confusion caused by the surprise attack, a young walrus is left alone. Its mother tries to climb back to help her pup, but the bear won't give up his prize easily. With all his strength, he tips over the female, who weighs more than 1,000 kilos. This rare attack on such a large predator was a risky move, but for our bear, it was well worth it. Others won't be so lucky. On the edge of a cliff, a colony of murres nests as they have for centuries. To feed their young, the parents return with odd little fish. In the past, they mostly fed their nestlings Arctic cod, but the warmer seas in some areas have allowed fish from the south to invade, like capelin and sand lance. The edge of the Arctic is creeping northward, endangering wildlife that specialize in ice. This starving polar bear waits at the foot of a cliff, hoping to feed on the meager carcass of a fallen bird. But no such luck. Like many others, he takes to the sea in search of whatever food he can find. On the southern edge of the Arctic, the devastating effects of climate change are clear to see. This polar bear couldn't find the food he needed to survive. Autumn is here at last, and the polar bears will soon be able to get onto the new ice shelf. But the ice is late in forming. Late autumns delay the vital formation of sea ice, which lets the polar bears travel to new hunting grounds. The town of Churchill in northern Manitoba is on the polar bear migration route north. It's a transitional route between land and the ice shelf. The bears have to wait for the ice again this year, which means a lot of bears congregate in one relatively small area. confrontation is inevitable. Hunger drives some of them to the shore in search of seaweed, anything to fill an empty stomach. But the largest carnivore in the Arctic can't manage on so little food. There's not much food on land. These bears normally keep well away from humans, yet some venture ever closer to the town. Over the years, residents of Churchill have learned to live with polar bears close to their homes. Hunger drives these predators to overcome their natural fear of humans. Bears that venture into town are caught and temporarily housed in a specially designed jail. Once the sea ice forms, they're released into the wild. The smell of garbage attracted this bear, but all he can find is an empty can. The first signs of ice appear, but it'll be a while before the bears can leave solid ground.
To me, it puts forward the argument that the environment should be at the top of the list and everything else comes under it. And I think that speaks to our lack of relationship with the natural world. Down south, where we're becoming more of an urban culture. In order to protect our home, which is our planet, you have to go out and you have to understand how nature works. And again, it's the idea, which is the wrong approach, is, well, it's us and nature. That's totally the wrong approach. We're nature.
The first signs of a developing ice shelf can barely support the weight of this impatient fellow. But he ventures out, desperate to find solid ice that will allow him to hunt again. A glimmer of hope. A sheet of ice, fragile but stable, enough to bear his weight. But this frozen fragment is an illusion. Further out to sea, there's not enough ice to withstand the impatience of the Lord of the Arctic. Looking toward the horizon, the polar bear searches in vain for a path to survival. His future depends on the viability of a region that is changing and unstable. And if nothing is done to stabilize the expected rise in temperature in the Arctic, he may well become the sad icon of a planet in decline. The St. Lawrence, a mighty Atlantic river, long renowned for the richness and abundance of its resources. Discovered by Basque, Breton, and Norman fishermen long before the arrival of Jacques Cartier in 1534, its history is based on fishing, and the coastal and insular life of today still beats to the rhythm of the tides and the seasons. The locals call it the sea, and it is said that its inhabitants have salt water in their veins. Today's fishermen are not merely a vestige of acquired knowledge. They are the history and origin of a people, and the St. Lawrence a sea that welcomed the builders of the New World. One of the largest rivers in the world, the St. Lawrence has fed Quebec and the Maritimes for generations. But today, the future of fisheries and its traditions remain uncertain. Fishing defined the identity of the sailors and fishermen of this country. For a long time, the development of coastal communities has been mainly based on the exploitation of stocks of a single species of fish, cod, once known as the white gold of the seas.
Everyone on the Gaspé Peninsula, on the Magdalens Islands, all over New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, was born with cod in their blood. Ask anyone who fishes nowadays, for any kind of fish, how they got started in fishing, it'll be cod. It was our livelihood. We all fished for cod. It's in our blood. From 1978 or 80 up to the 90s, there was lots of cod. We could land 20 to 25,000 pounds every day if we wanted. Then in 1990, the new factory trawlers came out. Instead of landing 25,000 pounds of fish, we could process 50,000 pounds a day, so we really took a licking. There was overfishing, there was climate change, restrictions on the seal hunt, and before we knew it, the cod was gone.
The overfishing left no chance for the resource. In 1992, with the stocks collapsing, the Canadian government decided to intervene.
I've decided that effective at midnight tonight, there will be a moratorium on harvesting of northern cod until the spring of 1994.
6 generations down the line passed down, and he's done nothing but S-H-I-T to us.
The fish from the goddamn water.
But who took it then? You and your goddamn people took it.
The tension began to mount. Fishermen blamed government scientists for overvaluing the resource. A moratorium put tens of thousands of fishery workers on the streets. The following year, the moratorium was extended to the entire Gulf of St. Lawrence.
Newfoundland had 30,000 unemployed fishermen and fish workers. And here there were, I don't know how many thousands, boom, sitting on their asses. I sat on my porch, bawling my eyes out for 2 years. 60 deep-sea fishermen in 1992, now there's 12. For 23 years, we've been twiddling our thumbs. I tell you, it's hard. Hard for everyone.
Stocks have never recovered, and Atlantic cod are now on the list of endangered species. In the Magdalen Islands, fishing is the foundation of the community. Again, the effects of the moratorium are still present. Denis Longuepay is a lobsterman. Richard Sears is a traditional fisherman. And Denis Eloquin now makes a living catching crab. There are not many fishermen left in the Magdalen Islands who are still fishing fish. It is now the lobster fishing industry and tourism that drive the economy. Ghislain Sears keeps the faith.
From the moment I could get into a pair of boots, I was fishing. You'd start out fishing off the dock, then horse around in the harbor in a skiff, catching mackerel, and fish for lobster in the summer, illegally. We ate what we caught. As a kid, I'd trip over my feet in the backyard, but I was steady as a rock at sea.
They're the same. I'm from the next generation.
Fishermen here recognize their mistakes of the past. At that time, there was little concern about the effects of overfishing a resource that was thought to be almost inexhaustible. Herring, an abundant species that breeds here in the spring, has been overfished. It now serves, among other things, as bait for lobster fishing, which people here call la boîte.
Bringing in great gobs of fish wasn't worth it in the long run. We know that today. Today, we don't have to have an enormous catch like before. Before, you had to get every fish in the sea and come in with your boat flushed off to make a living. It's not like that now. Now you can catch a bit of fish that pays a lot more per pound, and with well-structured quotas, you can fish longer and earn more money. What used to happen when there was an overall quota, we all went crazy. Everyone wanted to fish the fastest, catch the most, get the fish to the factory, and if you lose some, who cares? Just fill up the boat again. And in the end, as you said, we destroyed the herring stocks through our actions. Because the price was so low, we had to fill her up to the gunnels to make any money at all. It's different nowadays. Prices have shot up. We used to get 6 cents a pound for herring. Today it can go as high as 70 cents. So you don't need to fish as much. 20 years ago, you'd go fishing, you'd make mistakes, and it cost nothing. Not today. Nowadays, you need fuel, bait, and a crew. It costs $20,000 just to untire. Nobody can afford to lose $20,000, and then another $20,000, and so on and so on.
Speaking of overfishing, the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, the DFO, they were the ones who subsidized factory trawlers to scoop up massive amounts of fish of any kind.
Mistakes were made for sure, but there were also a lot more fishermen back then. There used to be 25, 30, or 40 trawlers on the Magdalen Islands. These days, there are 5 or 6.
No one is more cautious these days than fishermen. We've made mistakes, but today fishermen know that the fish they catch is their livelihood, and their survival depends on its survival. Places like the Maggies and all the small coastal communities in eastern Canada, we will only survive if we live off what we harvest from the sea.
The lessons of the past have inspired a new way of thinking among fishermen. Today, the lobster fishing industry has mobilized and initiated effective conservation measures to protect the resource. Every spring, the passion and effervescence returns to the docks. The 325 vessels, carrying about 850 fishermen and their assistants, are on the verge of going to sea, as is the long-held tradition. Claude Nadeau has fished all his life, like his father and his grandfather. Today, he passes the torch to his son Martin, who begins his first year as captain.
This is flounder. We use it as lobster bait. This is mackerel. And since the pots will be in the water for 2 days, we put in a lot. So it'll last the 2 days in the water. I started with my dad. And this year, it's my first year as captain. We catch some of the flounder in the Magdalens Islands, but not a lot of it. And it's expensive. It's around $200 a crate. We go through about one full crate a day. We don't catch much mackerel nowadays. There isn't much in the Maggies. They don't come near the shore, so we have to buy it. Japanese companies sell it. It's from Japan or Newfoundland. They sell the mackerel for $1.05 a pound. It's expensive. In my father's day, we caught a lot of herring, but in the fall, we'd catch mackerel. We'd freeze it in the fall to use in the spring. But there's none left. It's just not there. If you want to catch mackerel, you have to take your boat as far as Chetzican, places like that in the Gaspé. There's none along the shore around here. It's a big expense going that far. In my father's day, the month before lobster season was herring season. We'd catch herring, then switch over to lobster. After that wrapped up, we'd swing into halibut for a good part of the summer. Then mackerel, and back to herring. There was a lot of mackerel and herring. You'd go out in the morning and land 10,000 pounds of mackerel, just like that. Halibut now, it's not even 1 day a year. It's maybe 10 hours a year. Today with the price of lobster, it's not easy. With all the operating costs going through the roof, fuel, bait, the lobster isn't priced accordingly.
Mackerel, in abundance here a few years ago, is now imported from Japan and costs close to $2.50 per kilo.
With all the modern equipment, it's not hard to be better than we are. Because I've gone fishing with just a compass and the little black and white depth sounder, and using landmarks. The church, houses, and...
The future of the island fishery now relies on one main species, the lobster. The big day. The weather is good, and the fishermen patiently wait for the flare that launches the lobster fishing season. The flare is launched. The lobster fishermen finally return to sea after a 43-week wait. The lobster fishing season now lasts only 9 weeks. In order to conserve the resource, the 325 fishing boats have agreed to reduce the number of traps per vessel to 273.
This is my first year as captain. I'm letting my dad skipper for the first day. For the last couple of years, he mostly skippers. So I'll stay on deck today to manipulate the heavy traps.
Lobsters change area according to particular environmental variables, such as water temperature, that dictate the movement of the species. Every fisherman has his own tricks of the trade, but at the beginning of the season, it is a question of finding where the greatest concentration of lobsters are.
We've had the computer for the last 10 years, so every year you note areas that are better than others, but it changes. You can fish in one area where there were thousands one year, and the next, not a one.
Commercial fishing is in decline all over the planet. It is estimated that 90% of large fish have disappeared from the oceans in recent decades through unsustainable fishing practices. The St. Lawrence River is no exception.
After the bottom fell out of the ground fish stocks in the 90s, the numbers of small pelagic fish such as herring and mackerel shot up, possibly because of fewer predators or especially favorable environmental conditions. But then other predators went after them, seals, whales, and seabirds too. and fishermen went after them as well. They wanted the herring and mackerel as bait to catch other kinds of fish whose price was rising, like lobster or crab.
The significant decrease in large fish has allowed some species of small fish to proliferate. But fishermen quickly targeted these small fish, which they now use as bait.
You get more money if you sell small fish as bait than if you sell it for human consumption. There's something wrong there.
I have trouble, even though I'm a fisherman and I respect people who fish, with the idea of destroying one species to fish for another species. When we catch mackerel, we should make fillets, sell it for as much as we can get, and use what's left over as bait for other fish.
Some fishermen have begun using the remains of factory-processed fish as bait, which allows significant savings to those willing to change from more traditional methods. But attitudes are sometimes more difficult to change.
Alternative bait would be a solution. It's not that there isn't any. It's there, but the fishermen don't want it.
Right. Some people think they have to put in a fresh flounder every day, even if yesterday's is still good. Lobsters are scavengers, so are crabs. They'll go into the pots. It's not true they won't go in. We see it. Some people put... You can put nothing in the lobster pot and the lobster will go in.
Catching fish we could be eating to go and fish for other fish is a societal choice. At one time, the fish we ate were larger, and the fish we used as bait were fish people didn't want to eat. Now that we're eating smaller and smaller fish, we've created a sort of competition between bait fish and fish for human consumption.
Fishermen are still hoping for a return to commercial cod fishing. But the three different Atlantic stocks are at very different stages in terms of recovery. The news is quite encouraging for the cod population off Newfoundland. Against all expectations, scientists observed a return of cod in the mid-2000s, but in 2010, the unthinkable happened. The population exploded from 60,000 to 300,000 tons.
We have three different situations. Northern cod, which is on the east coast of Newfoundland and the coast of Labrador. The mortality rate is not a problem. And for the last 7 years, especially the last 3, we've seen an increase in cod stocks. When you hear about cod recovering, it's mostly in that area. Numbers are high, so we can afford to be hopeful about that. As for the cod in the north of the Gulf, the population is relatively stable, but there is an encouraging sign. Here, around the western tip of Anticosti, back in the day where there was always cod. For 20 years, the population density was low, and now we're beginning to see densities of cod around Anticosti. So while that's a good sign, overall it's not appropriate to increase inshore fishing. For the cod in the south of the Gulf, it's not looking good. We have a very high mortality due to gray seals.
The chances of the southern Gulf of St. Lawrence cod recovering are very low. The exponential proliferation of gray seal populations prevents the return of cod. It is estimated that one gray seal eats about 2 tons of fish per year.
Back in the 1980s, 82, 83, there were maybe 12,000 gray seals in the whole area. Today, we're talking about 500,000 and more. In the 90s, you'd see one seal, maybe 2 together. They were never in groups. They were fairly solitary. Well, today you see herds of seals. I'm talking about 100, 200, 300 seals all hunting together. There are places where back in the mid-90s, you could still find young cod, big schools of young cod. And the seals would force them to the surface. Then when they got them up, they'd act just like porpoises or other marine mammals. They swim around in a circle, trapping the cod in the middle and eat them all up. Every last one. A guy was at Miscou last week after halibut. In a day and a half, he lost 50 to 60 halibut of 50 to 100 pounds, all gone, destroyed. He said one line with 27 halibut on it, nothing left.
They stuff themselves on what should be ours, but we fishermen don't have the right to fish for cod. or to eat red fish because supposedly they're endangered. Or there's moratoriums. They're not endangered. We've had moratoriums for 25 years, but the seals have the right to gobble up our food.
The worst thing would be they start to eat lobster, like they do in Nova Scotia.
There are people living in outports who'll pay through the nose for that.
Could the dramatic increase in gray seal population affect the lobster industry, one of the last pillars of the local economy?
When it comes to lobsters that are already caught, we know that where there's a large concentration of seals, seals have been known to get into the pot and take the lobster out. But as for seal predation on lobsters that aren't in pots, that's really anecdotal, and I have very little information.
For 3 years, they've been saying we have to manage gray seal numbers. It's got to start right now.
When I hear all the stories from Europe and everywhere about people wanting to protect the gray seals, jeez, they don't know what they're doing. They don't know the damage they cause or how smart they are. They're like a pack of wolves. They develop fishing techniques and pass them on. The more there are, the more the techniques get passed on, and I'm telling you, that's a problem because one of these days, they're going to grab a child off the beach. That animal is born evil and dies evil.
We have no records to know what effect managing the seal population would have on cod stocks. It's easy to say it would work, but it's hard to find a solution.
The gray seal is not the only one stealing from the pantry. Millions of harp seals visit the St. Lawrence every spring.
This is the harp seal that they say is facing extinction, but there's around 8.5 million of them. And every year, 1.2 million more are born. Our hunting quota was only 400,000 animals. And in the last 3 years, we've killed 60,000. That seal eats 15 times more fish than all the fishermen in eastern Canada. In any wildlife reserve, when there's an overpopulation problem, whether it's coyotes or caribou, what do you see? There's a controlled hunt.
The Canadian government allows harvesting of harp seals, but the relentless pressure from environmental groups has successfully banned seal products in Europe. Each year, the media war resumes on the pack ice, a war of images, which, according to the fishermen, has lost its scientific bearings. The snow crab fishery is one sector of the industry that is booming. However, this lucrative fishery was shunned in its infancy. Fishermen who agreed to bet on this resource barely made ends meet until the market discovered this crustacean's unique flavor.
At first, with snow crabs, some people got crab licenses and didn't keep them. They tried all over here on the North Shore, no luck, so they went back to cod and halibut. And others kept at it. The Japanese got into crab fishing, and it flourished.
Claude Poirier experienced the evolution of the market, which now has a privileged relationship with Japanese customers who prefer quality rather than quantity.
Crab, starting in 1982. The Japanese showed up and that changed. Changed the complexion of that particular fishery. They're scrupulous about their production, whether it's packaging or the characteristics of the product itself. I have to say, they have eyes everywhere. When the clients are not here themselves, they have technicians who oversee their production. Even though a climate of confidence has been built up over the years, they're always here to ensure that the product is just the way they want it. There's a 2L. That's a crab destined for the raw market in Japan. It's a live crab, a clean crab. It's pink, so it's perfect. There's no algae, It's ready to go in to be soaked for the Japanese raw market.
In the crabs we've seen this morning, the last crabs of the season, how many would qualify for the Japanese market?
For the raw market, I'd say 1%.
1%?
Maybe 1 or 2 crabs. Fishing is always precarious. Cod, which was very abundant for many years, herring, mackerel, they've practically disappeared from our fishery. Crab, and especially lobster, they're about the only 2 species that remain stable.
For this first day of the season's catch, lobstermen keep their fingers crossed.
We've had years where the first days were no good. 50 pounds we'd start off with. It's better these days, a lot better. In years gone by, I'd sometimes catch no more than 50 pounds in the first weeks. It was always better at the end than at the beginning. It was rough.
The pressure is on for Martin, who begins his first year as captain. The results of this first day will determine whether the large lobster concentrations are offshore or closer inland. It is a rough start. The traps are virtually empty, and the lobsters that were caught are too small to be kept. The profit generated by the few lobsters caught doesn't even cover the cost of the bait, which in any case has to be replaced.
Not much of a catch here. Not much of a catch.
Other traps, dropped far offshore, are just as empty. The morale of the troops is low. A father wishes the best for his son, but is aware that the future is uncertain.
Disappointed?
Sure am. But you have to live with it. It's bound to improve.
A change of strategy. The traps are repositioned closer to the coast. The winter was particularly harsh, and the temperature of the water remains cold during this unusual spring. The lobsters may have decided to look for warmer water near the coast. An unexpected visitor.
He wants to rest. Maybe he'll bring us luck. He can stay. A new member of the crew. About time. Sometimes the pot's full and Other times there aren't a lot, but this is a good haul. It's the good luck bird.
32, 33, 34. Wow, that's great.
Good tableful.
36.
Makes you feel good. There are lots of negatives in fishing these days, but still the best job in the world.
39.
The status of lobster in the St. Lawrence is good right now. And when I say the St. Lawrence, I mean the Gulf and part of the estuary. The stock is abundant. It's increasing everywhere at this point. One issue with lobster fishing everywhere in the Atlantic in the early to mid-90s was that the minimum catch size was around 76 millimeters. And when you study lobster biology, you find out that the size at which a female can reproduce is larger than that. So, essentially, what we were fishing were individuals who hadn't had time to reproduce. One of the first things we did was increase the minimum catch size. It was introduced over 8 to 10 years at 1 to 2 millimeters a year, in collaboration with the fishermen.
You beat the record of your father.
Yeah, 39 in 7 pots. But he had a lot of good years. He had good years. Never 39, but he did okay. Means the lobster's still there.
After a difficult start, the situation improves considerably. The first day's catch is important and gives the fishermen hope for another good season. A scientific fishery program allows certain vessels to fish in specific areas to enable government scientists to assess the status of fish populations. But some are challenging the results of fisheries in this observation network.
When you're using the sounder, you can see the fish down there underwater. As far as I'm concerned, there's a large amount of fish in the Gulf. We're seeing a lot more cod because for the last 3 or 4 years, from the Baie des Chaleurs up to Matan and Rimouski, people are catching cod with a rod and reel. We've never seen that before, and we never thought it could happen. 10 years ago, someone said, in 10 years, you'll be catching cod inshore? Impossible. We've never seen such a thing. We've only ever caught cod out at sea.
An American study just came out that showed that in 10 years, with the current temperature, lobster will move 43 miles north. There are states in the U.S. where there's no more lobster. And here, there's a lot more everywhere, all the way from Nova Scotia right up to Prince Edward Island. And if it's good for lobster, it might be good for other kinds of fish. Fishermen are the ones who notice the major changes. I've been doing sentinel fishery for 10 years, and I fill the boat every 4 to 5 days. Everyone says, hey, there's fish. But the biologist always says, no, that doesn't prove there's fish. He's all alone, he's a good fisherman, maybe he got lucky and there's no other boats bothering him. There's something not right about that. I'm always asking DFO, who are you saving the fish for? For the seals or for the fishermen? If it's for the fishermen, give us quotas. Small quotas, and we'll go out and fish.
The natural mortality after 5 years is very high. For the remaining cod, they tend to be distributed more in areas of deeper water, areas where there is a lower risk of predation by the gray seal. And that's hence the observations in the Gaspé. The cod we see in the Gaspé are the last remaining cod from the south of the Gulf, who've moved into the most northerly part of their territory. So they stay in that area, but the population is still quite weak. And as soon as the fish get to be 5 years old, the natural mortality caused by seals is very high.
We had a meeting last winter where we asked for a cod quota in the south of the Gulf of 1,500 tons. 300 tons for research and 1,200 tons for the shore communities. Because 1,200 tons is nothing compared to the 35,000 tons eaten by gray seals. And we can't even get 1,000 tons to feed the people who live here? There's a problem.
What we demand is to be allowed to continue to fish, to show that there are cod, and to do it better than we used to. But to say we have no right to do anything, and that it can be 2 years before the government, DFO, reopens the fishery, well, we've missed our chance. When the moratorium came into effect, we were landing up to 80,000 tons here. That's a lot of fish in 1 year. Each year, for several years, there was 50, 60,000 tons. That's a lot of fish. Then there was zero during the moratorium, and after, we went back to 6,000, 7,000 tons a year. That's not a lot compared to 60,000, but it was too much. We tried that for a few years, 6,000, 7,000, and we needed another moratorium in 2003. Then we tried again, but no, it really was too much. So it took us about 15 years to learn that you can't rebuild the fish stocks while taking 6,000, 7,000 tons a year. So we're down to 1,500 tons. Overall, that's not a lot, but it does maintain commercial fishing, especially along the shores of Newfoundland. And Gaspé fishermen will fish in the area of the north of the Gulf, which takes in 4S, 4R, and the 3PN. Fishermen can fish, so they're out on the water. It's a minimum, but we think that this catch is small enough to let the cod stock rebuild slowly.
The predictions for the southern Gulf of St. Lawrence are rather pessimistic. Some scientists even suggest that cod could disappear from this part of the Gulf altogether. Redfish, however, are on the rise in the Gulf and are the only real hope in the short term.
They're afraid we'll go out and succeed, because then they can't say there's no fish. They don't want to give us quotas because they know there are fish out there, but they don't want to reopen the fishery, and we don't know why.
The errors of the past perhaps call for greater prudence in the fishing industry. Despite differing views of the current situation, the principles of prevention are influencing the decisions made by the fisheries administrators. But a new threat is now raising fears for fishermen. The old Harry oil field, located off the Magdalens Islands, straddles the boundary between Quebec and Newfoundland. It possibly contains large reserves of natural gas and oil. While the economic potential remains unknown, the environmental risks are very clear.
In Ottawa, 90% of the requests they get are for oil wells. They don't want to give up fishing licenses. The alarm bells started going off for us about 4 or 5 years ago. We don't know why, but I think they want to keep the area open. They don't want any more fishermen than there are now. Even if there was lots of fish, I don't think they'll allow any more fishermen. Because they want to drill, and you can't have fishing boats all over the place, otherwise they'll have to pay the fishermen off again. They want to drill at the entrance of the Gulf. All the pelagic fish, the ground fish, everything that moves around in the water passes through that channel. I say, what's the idea of drilling a well right there? It makes no sense. We don't know that much about the currents. As far as fish are concerned, we're the experts. We know better than anyone else, and we say, no, that's not the place. If there's one place in the world where you shouldn't be drilling, that's it.
The last day of the lobster fishing season. 9 short weeks to fill the coffers and hopefully live off the spoils for the rest of the year. Martin has had a good season. The family tradition is in good hands. The protective measures put forward by the Fishermen's Association and the scientists seem to be bearing fruit. The different populations of lobster in the St. Lawrence River are doing well, and the area has hope of some stability. A female hatches her eggs under her abdomen. They represent the future of the species and the future of the fishermen.
Right?
I quit school at 15. But for 5 or 6 winters, I took fishing courses to become a captain, what's called a Class 4. If my way of making a living dies out, I have nothing to fall back on. I'm all in. That's why I encourage my kids to have more choices than I do. Maybe just stay in school so they'll have some career options. If they want to do it, they will, but at least they'll have something to fall back on. It went great. Couldn't ask for anything better. We have lobsters, and the price is right. A good price is a good thing.
For your first year, it's great.
Super. With lobster season over, we're in mourning. We got nice boats and all, but we can't go out much.
The end of the lobster fishing season signals the close of most fishing activity in the Magdalene Islands. The next generation of fishermen are ready. But for the moment, the fish stocks don't offer a bright future for its young people in the commercial groundfish fishery.
It's hard to keep people fishing. They need to be able to fish for more than 9 or 10 weeks, relying on unemployment. They need to be able to hope to live off it for 4 or 5 months a year.
The future is promising, as I said. Very. I believe that absolutely, especially for groundfish. Cod is in our blood. We were born into it, and I know it'll come back and be a main fishing stock again. We won't make the same mistake again, believe me.
We want to build up the stock. For now, we're keeping the commercial fishing limit as low as 1,500 tons because we all want the stock to recover. In the short term, for cod in the south of the Gulf, there's not much hope.
Today, when you look at the amount of fish in the water, there's not a huge quantity. But I believe there's enough to feed people in the region and enough to maintain the level of skill. And that's important. We've learned a great deal. We've made mistakes, sure, because we kept doing things the old way. But I feel that we can now show there's a better way, which we will pass down to the next generation. I think that's the true value of this way of life.
Experienced fishermen are concerned. Expertise in the groundfish fishery is likely to be lost if the next generation can only work in lobster fishing.
This is your second season?
Yeah, my second season as captain. I bought my boat when I was 20. First year I fished, I was 20, and this is my second year, and I'm 21. There are a lot of young people coming up, more and more, I'd say. If you look at this coming year, there's probably 10 people enrolled in the 2 or 3 year courses for a fishing diploma. So it's great to see that there's still young people in the Maggies who want to stay here and fish. I love it. I have no trouble getting up in the morning because I love getting up to go to work. For me, it's not work. It's a pleasure. And for sure, it takes concentration to try to find as much lobster as you can, but no, when I'm out at sea, I look back at the shore, I'm a happy guy.
The new generation is here, but it will need to draw lessons from the past to develop a new, responsible, and sustainable fishery. History has taught us to be wary of a fleeting success. Today, a new way of thinking is gradually taking shape and is dictating new rules of prevention that did not exist before. If fishing was at the heart of the settlers of this country, the exodus of young people to major cities is now a threat to the future of the communities that still depend on the St. Lawrence for their survival. The St. Lawrence, which the new generation of fishermen continue to call the sea. After the storm, the soothing promise of protection and conservation for tomorrow seemed to lift the heavy mists of the past. They are words of hope that echo across the sea, never to be forgotten.